with one of my staff in my company, when I say, when I give them a difficult piece of feedback, I don't expect them to smile in that moment.
Yeah.
I don't expect them to take, I would hope that they don't react in a really negative or toxic way, but I don't expect them to have an easy time with that. But if that person can go away over the next few hours or days and then come back and say, I really thought about what you said and I'm going to work on that. That's something to look for. Because you can really, like that person, if you're both that kind of person, you can work with that person.
Yeah.
That's someone you can genuinely have a relationship with, because it's not a relationship that's based on perfection or never having an argument, but it is based on two people who are humble enough to genuinely own their mistakes or to own the areas where they want to get better. I'm always looking at the ways people argue and whether they're trying to do damage in an argument or whether they're trying to rebuild in an argument. And if you're with someone that every time you come out of an argument, you feel like they lacerated you, and you come out of an argument bleeding every time, and you're like, why did they have to say that incredibly nasty thing? And it's one thing if they come back an hour later and say, or even a day later and say, I truly regret having said that to you and I will do better. But if they won't even acknowledge that that was a really toxic way to have an argument and that was a really nasty thing to say, then that's a problem. Because this is a relationship that's not going to soothe you.
Yeah.
It's going to create more and more wounds. So that I would say is an important thing. And two people genuinely at the core of it operating as a team. What do you need? And can I tell you, you're working really hard right now. Can I understand what your goal is in doing this and seek to understand that and where that's coming from for you and why that's important? But can I also voice to you that I'm not feeling very loved right now, and that maybe it is just my insecurity, or maybe that, or maybe I don't have many things going on in my life right now as you do in yours, but I know one of the effects is it's creating some anxiety for me and it's making me feel like you don't love me as much as I love you. You want an environment where you can have that real conversation. And it then, to me, a relationship is no longer about right and wrong. It's about the conversation. Can the conversation be had? That to me is one of the greatest signs of a relationship you should hang on to. Is, can the relationship be had? And can it be had in a beautiful and productive and loving way? Because that's all, David Brooks said marriage is a 50-year conversation, right? Is that conversation, does it feel good? Doesn't always feel comfortable, but does it feel like this is a conversation that is making me better? Or is it a conversation that's always making me worse?
I love that. And I think it's such a vicious cycle though sometimes, because I find that you get into an argument, like you said, which I think the first argument is such a great, it's such a great marker to put down as let's reflect on this. I think that's such a great way of putting it that you said. And if you look at that, often what happens is the person reacts badly. It's natural. You react badly too. And then you're waiting for that person to make up, and that person's waiting for you to make up. And then maybe you go ahead and put the first hand in, but then now they deal with the second bad, and now you're waiting again. And I feel like we get lost in this waiting game. And I kind of got to a point where I was just like, I want to make sure that I am leading this conversation. So a conversation that me and my wife always have is, I'll always check in with her and be like, is this relationship going in the direction you want it to go in? Is this going in the direction? Is this relationship what you want it to be? And if it's not, what do you want it to be? And what are you willing to do to get there? And I'll always be like, well, this is not how I want the relationship to be. And this is what I want it to be. And I feel like that conversation for me is really healthy. And I'm always happy. One thing that I've got to right now, and I think my wife has this in different parts of our relationship, I'm always happy to take the responsibility for the quality of the relationship, because I'm in it. In the same way as I'm with my company, in the same way as I'm for this podcast, in the same way as I'm for anything. It's like, it's easy to sit there and go, well, what are you bringing to the table? And I realized at one point where I was like, if I care about stuff, I've got to be okay with grabbing onto the reins. And the funny thing is I started to realize that actually there are plenty of times when my wife does that. She just does it in different areas that I don't notice. And so it can feel like I'm carrying the burden, but actually that's not true. I'm taking responsibility where I thrive. And actually she's taking responsibility where she thrives. And I don't even notice that. And that's when I started to feel healthier, rather than like, I was like, well, where you show up? Like, what are you doing? And I remember when I was a monk, the teachers would always tell us that, you know, you may sit in a class with a non-charismatic teacher. So they were like, some of the monks are not going to be the most charismatic, the most attentive, the most like dynamic teachers of the text and the spiritual scriptures. And they were like, but if you're a student that's 10 out of 10, even if the speakers are 1 out of 10 in presentation, you're going to get lots. But if you're a 1 out of 10 and the speaker's 10 out of 10, then they're lifting you up. But by the way, if you're at a 1 out of 10 and they're at a 1 out of 10, that's all you're going to get. And it's kind of like what your friend said about the bag of milk. You know, the idea of like taking your own responsibility for if you want to be in a relationship.